So this week's episode, I've taken the opportunity to show you some of what we've been up to. So the owner, Peter, has come down to have a look at the car. So he works overseas, so we don't get to see him too often. So I got Simon and Nick to come in and put all the trim in the car. So that's what they're up to now. And the idea is to set it up so when he turns up, it's going to give him an idea of what it's going to look like. Now obviously there's no fabrics on anything at the moment, but it's the ideal opportunity to sit him in the car, make sure that he sits in the seat comfortably. And you can see there now where they've made the actual armrest for the to look like the FG that weren't done in the last program, and the seats in there as well now with all the kick plates. So the back of those seats will actually have a full cover, so the holes there are really just what it is. And now you can see Darren in the front, me in the back, just making sure Darren's getting nice and comfortable at the seat, and I've still got enough room for my legs, and that's all worked out really good. I'm really happy about the way that's come out, because there was a concern about that. So here's Peter. So they've just come off the flight, so they were up very early to catch the red eye to come down from Brisbane, and that's Paul from Anything Racing. So the idea today is Paul's come down as well so that we can go through some of the electrics, because he does all of the computer stuff, and that's Peter's first sit in the car there, so I think that's a happy face. So he's very pleased and happy the way it's come out, and we've decided we're going to run with the XC hood lining with the XC sun visors and mirror, so it'll have pretty much all XC from that hood lining all the way down. And then I've made the changes to that dash, which he's happy with that as well, and we're just working through now stitching and where that'll go. And then we've moved into the computer now to look at photos that I've got on file for this car with ideas for trim, and we're looking at the G6 there that Ford had. So we've now moved out looking at the engine. So part of the issue that we've got to work out with Paul is the fly-by-wire. So the harness you can see there is the XC one that Luke's remanufactured, I guess, and moved things around to fit within this car. And then we've used the throttle body as a device to be able to pull the linkages on the injection. So we just need to make sure that's all going to work, and where all the sensors are and the threads for the sensors out of the FG that then fit in. So that's Luke there. So this is after lunch now, and Luke's come in with his new puppy Harry. He's got in his hands there, and that's Peter and Paul just checking out the butterflies. So we just got to work through some issues to make sure that the motor on the fly-by-wire is strong enough to pull all 8 injectors. So I'm sitting here with Peter. How you going, buddy?
Good, mate. Good, thanks.
Good.
Yep.
So Pete was up early this morning. Peter's the owner of the car, and he's come down today, and he's been down a couple of times over the duration of the build. And today's really about trying to finalise some of the trim things, some of the things with the engine. But I thought I'd take the opportunity while you're here, mate, just to give people a bit of an understanding about you and how you ended up here and building this sort of car, because I get that question a lot through YouTube. That, you know, who's the sort of person that goes to this much time and effort and money to build a car so unique, I guess. And so I thought they'd take that opportunity. Unfortunately, you brought some photos down so we can use those on the screen. So you're up early, obviously.
Yeah, 4 o'clock start to get down here this morning, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Being in the mining resources area, early starts are always the go.
So talking about that, people often ask me what you do. So you work in the mining field.
Yep.
And you pretty much work all around the world.
Yeah, it's like a lot of management systems, risk management systems, and work pretty much internationally.
Yep.
Yep.
Cool. So you've given me some photos. So we're staring at an XC now.
Yep. That's my first car. So my first car was actually a yellow 6-cylinder XC, bought from your old dealership. Well, I think you'd
moved on from
that
them,
dealership but Ford, yellow Ford 6-cylinder it was, and like most young guys wanted to do better, so that turned into a yellow, from a yellow 6-cylinder it turned into a blue 351.
To what it is there now. And isn't it crazy that it's such a small world that we're both originally from Broken Hill?
Yep.
And I think I worked out one day we're 5 or 6 years apart.
Yep.
You're about 5 or 6 years behind me. So we never sort of crossed paths in the hill as such, that I recall anyhow, even though very similar interests.
but we did cross paths because a lot of the places we would go for bits and pieces or get work done, by chance, when we've sort of talked later, we went to the same place. Like, I think the guys that did the paint on that car was where you worked later on one
We
of your
did the
cars.
coupe. Yeah. So it's crazy, isn't it? So that one there was the one you'd modified. So you was telling me earlier you put a V8 in it. You even put some parts off my brother.
Yep, Reg sold me some bits and pieces that went into that one.
And the progression from that, so obviously that was a street car, but you're telling me it was sort of becoming modified and doing more and more to it, and then someone put you on the right track.
Yeah, like I spent a lot of money on street cars, and a guy that was doing a bit of work for me at the time, Cliff Trude, great guy.
Trudy?
Yeah, Cliff Trude, everyone knows Trudy, the red hat. He got me interested in motorsport, so Speedway, he got me, I suppose, involved. Bought my first car, stock car, LJ Toranas. And that was actually built by another mechanical guy in town. It was owned by a guy called Bill Lenton, who was another...
Oh, Billy Lenton. So Billy used to spend a lot of time with my dad. See, this is a really small world, isn't it? So you got racing, and then there's another photo here. So is that the same XC?
Same XC, that was the tow car for the stock car, and I ended up, I haven't got the photos, but I had a blue XB, same wheels, V8, because I also raced a Sprinter for a guy called Bill Johnson, who was out the west.
The
Johnson,
yeah.
So I used to drive a Sprinter for him at times, and then quite often we'd go to a meeting and we'd have both cars.
You had it bad. You had it bad, didn't you? Yeah. So, just talking about the Earth Mover, he had an LTD.
Yep.
A Burgundy LTD, which I remember, because I used to go out there because my signwriter used to work out of his workshop.
Okay, yeah.
It is a small world, isn't it?
Yep.
So, towing a stock car there, but then you've got a street version as well.
Yeah, that was a sort of like my girlfriend at the time, now wife. I thought it'd be a good idea with all these LJ Toranas parts that I'd have buy her a Torana, which she hated with a vengeance because it had triple SUs and it was had some work done to it. And for those that know those types of carbies, she always used to flood it. And this is before mobile phones. She'd get to a phone booth, ring me up, come and get this bloody car. And by the time I'd get there, it'd start first.
So it ended up going, not moved on?
Because it, not flooded anymore. So
some of these cars we'd love to have today, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
So the next photo is either being built or being trashed, one or the other?
No, that one's being built. Another good racer in Broken Hill was a guy called Gino Laravere. And the guy that used to do Gino's work, a really good fitter, was Dennis Oliver. So he helped me put this together. But then I'd also moved along in years, and another guy, Kim Colleen, he was a real pragmatic, really good racer as well. Between Cliff, Gino and Kim, they'd won
a lot of the top names in Broken Hill Speedway, that's for sure.
A lot of state titles and so forth, they'd done really well. So Kim had a big smash in his car, so a lot of the go fast bits out of his car went into this build, and I raced that for a fair few years.
So how many years you had in Speedway?
About 6 years, and then decided to get engaged and gave away all the motorbikes, all the motorsport, and so like we ended up with a HT station wagon that we had for about 8 years. We looked after it, gave it a couple.
So you're still in Broken Hill?
Still in Broken Hill. And then after we got married, we bought that Ford again from what was Williams Ford then. Yep. And got to have something that goes fast, so we had a ski boat.
A ski boat to go fast, yep.
Yeah, and
so Upper Copey?
Upper Copey, and then we moved to Perth in '97. So the car and boat went with us to Perth.
Yeah, cool. So you moved around a bit then, so I believe Perth, and then you moved from there to Brisbane.
Yeah, but in between there I was a couple of years in Melbourne, but when I was in Melbourne working for Pasminco Mining Company, I was living in Broken Hill, working in Melbourne Monday to Friday, and then come home weekends.
Wow.
So did that for 2 years.
Yeah. been around and seen it. So we've got a Holden here. What's going on there?
I haven't bought all the photos. I had a lot of cars. This was, once we moved to Brisbane, I went back to a sort of muscle car, street car.
Yep.
And that was a Crewman Cross 8. And you probably look at that and go, that's not a Cross 8 because it's low. So that was all-wheel drive, but I actually dropped it 3 inches from the time and built a 402 engine in that one.
You like a challenge, don't you?
Yeah.
So speaking of challenges, so there's the first photo of the thing that we've been playing with for a few years now. So it looks like a pretty clean car that you started with.
Yeah, really like. I bought that sight unseen while I was in Indonesia, I think at the time. Bought that sight unseen, had no engine and gearbox in it, but it was sort of like a bush car, but it was nice and clean.
Clean, yeah, it looks clean. So I believe you had a few things going on at the same time, because obviously I've had a look at the photos and we had a bit of a chat about it. So we're now looking at a Chev pickup.
Yeah, it's a GMC. It's actually a Holden. It was a GMC, but it was bought in by Holden.
So they were brought in and then plated by Holden.
Yeah. So I actually bought that from a guy just up the road from here in Fig Tree, Wollongong. But again, I bought that sight unseen online.
So is that something you always wanted, or it was just something that took your fancy on the day?
I reckon they always look cool.
Yeah.
And when I looked at that, I thought, it's got potential, sort of thing. And at the time, I had that car, and the guys at Hot Rods helped put that together. And around that same period of time, Gibbo to my right there, and Graham and Tim, they do a sort of like, we do a pilgrimage to SEMA and so forth, and we get around to some of the other workshops like Foos and Troy Trepanier and so forth. So
do the trip. I've been fortunate enough to do it once now, and I'd like to eventually get back there sometime. But obviously, for those who've been watching, Tim's obviously the engineer now, so that was a bit of a handy thing to have with you.
And we'd made a start with the XC with the guys at Rods, but when we were away on that trip and spoke especially to Troy Trepanier, I thought, I want to go in different direction, sort of thing. So I'd already had things like engine and gearbox for the XC, which was a 351 Cleveland with a Tremec, and I thought, different direction. The Tremec and gearbox went in the truck, and when I was at SEMA, I bought the.
So that's where the big block of aluminium come from. So you were there, opportunity knocks.
Yeah, and I also got in Tim's ear and sort of like, what can we do from an engineering point of view? What's the limitation, sort of thing. So I probably drove him mad for a couple of days on what I could and couldn't do. But while I was there, saw some cars with those sorts of engines in it. I thought,
that's a beautiful piece of kit, that's for sure. So you got the truck finished, obviously.
Got the truck finished, yeah. So while we're building the truck, I also got it in my head that my wife learnt to drive in a HR Holden. So I thought, the birthday was coming up, so we got that put together as well. That's a HR, but that's all V6 Commodore.
I was going to say, so it's the V6 Commodore and some decent brakes by the look of it as well. Yep. And you've still got that one?
Yep. Still got that one. Unfortunately, got rid of the truck and another. I had a GT at the same time, so the current project I'm on at the moment, and I knew I was going to be overseas for quite a period of time, I decided to get rid of the truck and the GT to make some space at home.
Clear a bit of room, eh?
Yep.
So the picture I've got here now that's pretty much when we got the car. I think we'd put it together a bit. It wasn't quite looking like that, but all the bits were there and the wheels and all those sorts of things. So tell us a bit about how I come into the picture and what brought you to me, and after that SEMA trip and talking to some of the people over there, how we ended up hooking up.
Yeah, look, Troy blew my hair back. Had a chat to Foos on that trip as well. He had some good ideas and so forth, and generally walking around the whole SEMA scene, you've been there, you've seen it, sort of thing. It's sort of like, shakes your head a bit. So come back, had a good think about it, put the car in storage until we worked out what we were going to do with it, and then decided, I knew you from Broken Hill and what you'd done and what you'd achieved over the years. So I thought, well, he's a Ford guy. You know, I know I'm going to get a bit of quality work done, but I thought, yeah, he's probably not going to be available. So made the call, reached out, and you were working on Cobra.
One of the Cobras, yeah. And I mean, it tickled my fancy a bit. There's a few things. Obviously, I'm an ABC Falcon guy primarily. Back to a sedan. I'd done a few coupes, and I was getting a bit sick of doing the same thing. But that engine and that diff is pretty full on. And from that first phone call, then we sort of worked out some timelines, and I came up and had a look at the car in a storage unit, and that big engine in a box. And then a chat with Tim and yourself over lunch that day to work out whether we could maybe go forward.
Yeah, but I think you worked out pretty quickly it needed some adult supervision associated with the build, because I was a bit all over the shop in the way of themes and directions.
Yeah, well, I think the problem was, and I mean we've dealt with that working together on this one, is that trying to keep on some sort of focus and some sort of direction. Yeah. And not all change is bad change, but sometimes, you know, you've got to have a plan and try and stick towards it. And I guess my influence was to try and bring it back a little bit from where it was. And then we got hooked up into the FG thing, and that's just another story, I guess, because that was never in the equation. I mean, it had the seats and the console from the previous people, but then once we'd sort of looked at it, like, I'm really happy where it's evolved to.
Yep.
But it wasn't in my mindset when we started. I
think it was a sort of like evolution. I don't think both of us had FG in our mind at the time, because the bits originally were BA bits and pieces. So,
yeah.
But the FG come along, I think, primarily because, I wanted to run a 6-speed automatic gearbox.
Yeah, to get enough room to get the box in, I suggested we put basically the trans tunnel in and then pick up the seat mounts for engineering, because a lot of it comes back to that engineering to be able to get the cars registered and tick the boxes for the engineer. We need to sort of do those things. So clearly there's been some changes as we've gone from timelines and those sorts of things, and I think it's important for people to understand that it's nice to have a timeline, but sometimes you've got to understand, I've got to understand, and you clearly know, is that this project's been, 10 years now from when you bought that first car.
Yep.
And as you said to me only recently, you know, before we pulled the pin on Summernats, was that there isn't a rush and let's do it right.
Yeah, I'd hate to rush it and sort of like go, I should have waited for this, or should have done that, or, you know, I should have given me some more time. So time's not a factor. Let's get it right.
Yeah, and I think for people to understand, you know, in my case as well, things change, and obviously doing this, what we're doing now, I'm not out there working. But in addition to that, you know, my right-hand man now's moved and commutes back, and he's only here half the time he was. So, you know, it's a clear goal now. We want to see the car finished by the end of the year, but we don't have deadlines, and we're working along to get it done and get it done right. And of course, your mate Paul's down with us at the moment. So Paul's from Anything Racing up in Brisbane as well.
Yep.
And he's involved with a lot of the computer control components, the ABS, all of those things that come with the computer obviously have sensors and all, and we're doing a lot of that today as well, and Luke's coming in and we'll work through those processes. So all of those things are going together to get a result on the car. But what a lot of people want to know, and I want to know, what are you going to do with the car when we finally get it done and we get it all sorted on the dyno and stuff? What's the plans?
I'd go back to a real early discussion standing in the shed back in Brisbane when you first looked at the car, and I said, I want a daily driver. And you said to me, I don't do daily drivers. And so you don't do daily drivers, you do, you know.
Well,
So take that on board. I didn't want to admit that, and so I say, yes, it is going to be a show car.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it'll do with the show scene for a while, and then after that, I'll drive it.
And I think the difference is you can have a car like this that will function, will do everything right, is legally registered, still with all the bells and whistles, but at the end of the day has function and will work, but still can fit within to be able to go to a show. And if I remember rightly, when we had lunch that day, as I said to you, if it doesn't go to a show, I don't want to build it, because at the end of the day, at my age now doing what I do, a lot of it's about being able to stay in the sport I love, and building a car for someone that no one sees, that's sitting in a shed, that doesn't go on Facebook, never goes to a show, I don't want to build it. So it's been a good partnership to date. No arguments.
No arguments.
No, mate. It's been good. We'll keep forging forward. So you're back to work overseas next week?
Next week, yeah.
Yep. And we look forward now to some of those things that are happening that really are starting to show, and it was good to be able to sit you in the car today and get a feel for where we're at. And now we start, as you said earlier, get this bodywork sorted and get some colour on it. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, it's really, really good. And as I said earlier today, when you get in it today, you think, geez, this is really good.
Really good.
Yeah.
All right, mate. Thanks for your time. And we'll continue to keep in touch and stay with Road to Top 60.